You're listening to Haggy Shack Radio on haggyshack.com with Barbara Threecrow in Beyond Reality. You are live.
Well, thank you very much, Colleen.
You're welcome.
Hi, everybody. It's March 24th. This is Beyond Reality. I'm Barbara Threecrow, and I'm live, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to continue with what I had kind of brought in last week before I get back to Don Juan and the teachings of Don Juan and the shaman's way. And this is waking up to a new reality. And I think we're kind of waking up every day to a new reality. This covers, moving into higher realms, time looping, moving backwards, interconnectedness, and a lot more. And I left off last week with this author here. Actually, it's her experiences about deja vu. And we covered last week numbers and time tracking. In other words, seeing a particular number or a time around you constantly, or various numbers. And she's moved into deja vu. And, I have my theory, my perspective, and my insight on deja vu. I feel that we are simultaneously functioning in parallel realm, and perhaps past, present, and future. And in my growing up years, I had a lot of deja vus. I have them occasionally now also, but not as frequently as when I was younger. And I came to understand, upon exploring this and seeking guidance on this mystery, that in our present life, oftentimes we will travel in dream time, and how we go into our future life, and there may be a moment in that future life that is imprinted within our memory, and when we wake up in this present life, we could be moving along for days or weeks or whatever, and then suddenly we have what we call a deja vu. And I feel that is the moment that we kind of linked up or connected with the time that we traveled into that future moment, and then suddenly this memory rushes back. And we often say with a deja vu, oh wait, this happened before. Wait, this happened before. That's often how we describe this. So that's my perspective and the guidance that I received on that. And let's see where she goes here, continuing. She's calling, she says this is a minor deja vu while talking to Tom on the phone. And then shortly afterwards, I had an ear ringing. Yes, she's talking about the ear ringing situation too. She's equating in her deja vus how her ears do ring in certain situations around deja vu, and you'll hear more about that as I read on. So this is an interesting one, because this is the night that we came this close to breaking up. Up until this point, there were things going on said, and this night was when it all came out. And coincidentally, I get an ear ringing. And then this other time, March 23rd, she was talking on the phone to Tom when she had a deja vu out of nowhere. And it was a weird one. And this involved a TV screen and something that she was watching on TV on September 11th. So I could directly remember the exact date of when this deja vu connected to. It wasn't a normal deja vu where I thought I'd had this conversation before. Okay, so she's relating to those words as I just spoke. When we have a deja vu, we say, oh, this happened before. Okay, instead, it was a deja vu that didn't have anything to do with our conversation that we were having in that moment, but rather involved that particular moment somehow connected to September 11th. I've never heard of this type of deja vu, but it could definitely be an indicator of a time loop of merging realities. And interestingly enough, as she was writing these words, she makes a note and says, I'm having a deja vu right now as I type this. So here's another one. Deja vu when I got home. Parked my car next to some van that was there from my neighbor, a vendor or repairman or delivery guy or something. I got out and had a strong, short deja vu. Now, I know logically that this incident hasn't happened before. That was the first time I came home to find that van there and that delivery guy. But yet I also knew that this had happened before. If anything, the deja vu may have had something to do with the fact that on my way home, I was faced with a fork in the road. That means a decision moment, however small. It does. She was exiting on 441, heading home, and had to decide whether to go to the bank to cash my check or just go to the post office and then go home. And she opted to just go to the post office and then home. She didn't feel like standing in the line at the bank. And then she says maybe that decision was a timeline altering one. But that's a question because she says who knows. Now, she had a deja vu simultaneously with an ear ringing in her right ear. And people believe that deja vu means nothing or else are just natural occurrences on our brain. I guess she's saying that can't be true. Another one, too many deja vu things at night while we were sitting at the kitchen table finishing up our food and talking. The first happened about 7:30 or so, and the second happened at 7:39. And in the ear ringing log there are two separate incidents of me getting ear ringings in my left ear at exactly 7:39. 1 a.m., 1 p.m., and with the a.m., one coinciding with a helicopter flying right overhead. I wonder if it was one of those unmarked helicopters. I think that's what she's indicating. Now I got a deja vu at that time, just as the helicopter flew over. And here's another one, a deja vu in the middle of the ear ringing. Another strange one, in my right ear at 2:30 a.m., exactly on the nose. Had a deja vu in the middle of both ear ringings. And on a side note, there was also a storm that night, which originated in Naples while we were over on that side of Florida visiting this guy named Cameron, and the storm followed us back to Fort Lauderdale. Now, parallel universes. Deja vu on 4/26 while at Whole Foods Market at about 9 p.m. Deja vu when typing on the computer at home on 4/27 at about 7:30 p.m. Then, Tom and I were hanging out talking after my first deja vu, and I mentioned that I had come up with a great idea for a thread topic for the message board that he runs. While I was at lunch today, but now I can't remember what it was. In other words, she just lost that thread of thought. Completely forgot it. Poof, gone. And that bothered me because I knew it was a cool idea. So then a little while later, when we were talking, he tells me that he's getting a deja vu. And that lasted a few seconds. And I say, oh my God, kind of kidding around, like, wow, whoa, cool. And then I said, and he responded with, when I said my wow, cool stuff, he said, okay, now it's over. I know you didn't say that in a parallel universe. A little humor there about a deja vu being related in timeline manipulation. But that's exactly what my idea was, actually, a thread about parallel universes and alternate timelines. That exact phrase, and I wouldn't have remembered it had he not had his own déjà vu? Okay, but that was a first. A déjà vu resulting in a specific phrase that connects synchronistically to something I had thought about earlier in the day and the subject I'd forgotten about relating to a déjà vu itself. I had a really strong déjà vu this afternoon while walking back to work from Aspen Ice Cream. It actually stopped me in my tracks right there on the sidewalk as I looked around curiously. Then it slowly faded out and I continued on my way. This déjà vu was the day before we left the state, obviously tied into that. There was a Hurricane Francis was offshore at this time, and we were in the process of getting ready to leave the state, and we did. We didn't just evacuate, we actually full on left the state and moved to Virginia. So this was a huge transitioning period in our lives, and it makes sense that I would experience such a strong and intense déjà vu the day before we moved. There was also other weirdness going on that week leading up to our leaving. And on November 8th, she seemed to have a déjà vu while making a post to the Goro Forum, and that's a post concerning combining all theories of creationism, Darwinism, and intelligent design. It was also my 33rd post there. And after I posted, I went back in later to reread it. I was the 141st viewer for that particular thread. The déjà vu lasted for a while, and everything about me, what I was doing, looked like I'd done it before. Sitting at the computer in the late morning, cloudy and cold outside, the lightning, and while I was writing about exactly what I was writing about, all was familiar. Here's a minor but noticeable déjà vu while at her brief temporary job. It turned out to be my last day there. I voluntarily gave up the assignment because it didn't feel right and it wasn't work I wanted to do. I wondered if the déjà vu had to do with that or not. It could be a major fork in the road moment, I suppose, whether I keep the job or go for something else and go down a different path. Note, it was definitely a major fork in the road moment. I threw away this job and wound up getting an assignment that was literally 1,000,000 times better and was exactly where I needed to be at that time, teaching me all kinds of nitty tips and really cool tips and tricks that I would later use to generate my book. I wasn't supposed to be, obviously, at that other assignment. Déjà vu while training at my new temp job. Although this was something above and beyond, it was an actual memory of having played through the current scene before, but now the memory or the experience was plowed under or overwritten, if you will, but fragments were still there. Déjà vus create that weird sensation in our mind. This had no sensation. It was a fragment of a real memory. I was sitting at the receptionist's desk training, and while gazing off into the air in front of me, I could feel the memory of doing this entire scene before already. It was on the tip of my brain, just far enough away that I could not fully pull it up. I felt like I could remember the memory, just couldn't fully access it. Again, no weird déjà vu sensation accompanied it. It was just an actual tangible memory that wanted to fully emerge but couldn't. It plowed under, overwritten. I could only glimpse one tiny fragment, enough to know that this scene had already existed before, and I was doing it again. This whole month has been weird in general, and the idea of time loops has been a big theme with a few people that we know. So I'm thinking that one major possibility for this particular déjà vu involves time loops. A lot of people don't have any sort of knowledge or experience with the idea of higher stuff, playing around with our timeline, inserting things in and changing things around, for instance, overwriting with a new version of events. But in my opinion, time looping and messing with our time is a very real thing. It's a timeline tug of war, you might say, and it's been going on for thousands of years. I believe it only because I've seen my own personal proof for it, and not just with deja vu. Both Tom and I were getting deja vu off and on for this 3-day time period. Then on July 21st, I narrowly dodged some very outside help being in a car accident with a car that ran its very red light and which would have T-boned my driver's side. Not only would my car have been wrecked, but I would probably have been hurt. The other car wasn't going terribly fast, but fast enough to do some damage, that's for sure. There's more surrounding this incident, much more, and it's multi-layered. Since Friday, July 21st was the weekend before I was going to upload my book to Lulu Press and make it available for purchase on my website in hard copy. Now, including new, very important material that hadn't been in the initial electronic free PDF version. Then, this accident attempted to happen just prior to this, preluded by a number of deja vus both Tom and I had. Further says to me that deja vus are about timeline alteration, and in this instance, it's an event that would have affected him as well. So this deja vu, to help his deja vu at this time. Now, those are the highlights. The best of the best and the weirdest, and a sampling of the different types of deja vu. They illustrate that, for me at least, deja vu are not natural. They're not meaningless, and they're not random occurrences. So what are deja vus then? Now, here's what she says. Letting the incidents above speak for themselves, we find several repeating underlying themes happening. Number 1, a fork in the road moment. Choices and decisions being made. Relationship about to break up. About to move, maybe. We're about to quit a job. Even taking a different route home from work and also changing plans. And number 2, premonition of the deja vu, or a deja vu that segues into a premonition. And number 3, deja vu simultaneously coinciding with number sightings and ear ringings. Now, the fork in the road moments of choices and decisions being made are definitely one major component behind the meaning of deja vus. Now, this is, again, her perspective and her experience. So a fork in the road is really a timeline split. Things are branching. Parallel timelines are forming. So in The Matrix, when Trinity explains that deja vu, what that means, they changed something in the program. In a way, it's actually a bit accurate. Something is changing, or the probability is sky high that it's about to at any second, and the future timeline is literally hanging in the balance. Connected to this are the premonitions connected to deja vus, indicating time loops. Now, I'm going to talk about this for a second because just what came to my mind in this moment. Okay, so she's suggesting, and this is also very possible, that there's someone messing with our timelines. Okay, and it's in a way I'm thinking, the way we are all on the medicine wheel of life, we're all, or the sacred web, the great sacred web. And let's say that you are somewhere over there on this far distant lower part of the sacred web or sacred hoop. And let's say that spirit or guidance is attempting to move you somewhere further along on your journey upon the sacred web in order to meet up with someone that is very significant, or a circumstance that would be very significant in your life. Now, the other person or circumstance is relying, of course, on timelines and behaviors and choices and the free will that we all have and determinations. Now let's say that looking at the big piece here, the big puzzle, how significant your meeting up with this other person, I'm just going to use that analogy in this moment, that how important it would be your meeting up with this particular person at that particular juncture in your life. Let's say that something diverts you. Let's say something occurs and diverts you, and you're not on the timeline loop where they, the beings or spirit, or is it creator, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not saying I'm right in this moment. I'm just giving you an analogy here. So let's say that you're delayed and you're not taking the steps or the movement needed to take in order to get you in that part of the web or web of life at a required time moment, so that you could meet up with that other person because it's so significant. So that's what comes to my mind here when she's talking about this, her experience with the time loop, creating something to hold back time or to loop time around so that all the, well, I guess we could say the divine timeline falls into place where you actually do follow through with meeting up with that other person, that other circumstance, or that other situation. That's what I'm talking about. That there might very well be something far greater going on here that creates time loops, kind of diverts us a little bit down one road and then swings us back around, and then we're back on the pathway or the journey. But I do feel, and it's amazingly so, and she'll talk about synchronicities too, and I do think that there's synchronistic things going on where we meet up with someone, and it's really very important. It's a very significant part of our life. And also we often do meet up with someone or have a situation and we feel like, I know this person, or this person is so familiar to me, or, or something feels right, So I'm just saying, looking at the journey on the web of life, how these things might very well happen. And like I said, these are synchronistic moments, That wouldn't have happened if I had done this or if I had done that, but instead I chose this and here I am. And it feels so right. So, okay, how many times have we looped through an event that we can now remember that the déjà vu is about to hit? So remember what happens after the déjà vu, as with Tom's November 12th, 2002 occurrence, or even worse, her November 15th déjà vu, the memory of the scene unfolding before me, where the recollection was on the tip of my brain like it had been plowed under or rewritten over. So there's a scary thought, if that's indeed what happened. That particular aspect of déjà vu interests me the most. Now, there are theories that our lives are actually a series of time loops. We repeatedly cycle through these loops until the choices we make can break us out of these loops. When we're in a loop, we experience the déjà vu, or the sensation of having done this before, because we actually have. We move forward and break out after we do something, let's say, she says right, in parentheses, until we hit the next time loop snag. So that's an interesting theory, and she may have something there, because it's similar to what I was saying, how we move forward in life and we experience in the dream time our life, and then we come upon it in waking life. It's that memory of something. But I have to say that the déjà vus that I've experienced have not related to anything in particular, in particularly life-changing, I guess I'd say. For me, I'd say the déjà vus that I have experienced, that I can recall, are sort of like a reminder, just like the ringing in the ear is like a something connecting with you, or an aha moment, or a reminder to pay attention. So the deja vus are sort of like telling me, yes, you've been here before because you do time travel and dream time. And that's, your experiences past, present, and future simultaneously. And there are parallel realms, and there's something far greater going on than you even realize it. And there's a great mystery. So that's what I'm saying. But her theory is I'm liking this too. So being in a loop and getting something right. And I kind of agree to that. I think that we have been around this great loop, wheel of life, more than once. And we're, working to get this right. That's why I was saying, I don't know, the other day on a show I was saying, are we going to graduate this year? So we sort of like get a chance, I guess. I would call it the grace period to get something right, or to do it correctly, or to shift something, learn something, to shift something to a higher frequency, I'll say. So breaking out of the time loop is actually creating a new and branching timeline, so we move forward in life, okay? Now, we won't remember all the times that we cycle through a loop over and over again. We only remember the final version, much like editing a Word document 100 times. The reader only sees the final version, not the 100 draft versions that came and went before. And the author says she'd be inclined to think this version of reality was a bit far-fetched, except how else can she explain knowing and expecting and waiting for a déjà vu before it even happened? So I put my salad plate down and I looked around for it, bracing myself, because I knew it was going to be a doozy. Kind of like I'd been through it so many times by that point that I knew the drill. It was a little weird, if you ask me, and highly indicative of a reality that was on repeat mode for some reason. Then we have déjà vus happening either at the exact moment of ear ringings and number sightings, or else clustered closely around these other phenomenon. Since ear ringings for me have to do with monitoring and abduction, to have a déjà vu coinciding with one or centered around my numbers is indicative of manipulation and interference by something that's trying to meddle in my life and steer me onto an undesirable future path. So in that regard, it's an artificially created timeline split. So at the core, déjà vu seemed to be all about timelines and time loops. Whether branching naturally or via negative meddling influences, or being caught in a repeating time loop, at the core it seems to be all about timelines, and I would agree with her there. Now, the author says she's heard that science can duplicate the sensation of a déjà vu by stimulating the temporal lobe of the brain, temporal of or pertaining to time. However, a brain surgeon can also poke your brain in various spots and make you smell smells that aren't actually there, like coffee, for instance, or flowers. So does it mean, that every time you smell something burning, then someone is poking your brain with a scalpel? Of course not. Some logic applies with a déjà vu. They may be able to artificially recreate that sensation, but it doesn't negate the validity of it when it happens for real. It just means that for whatever reason, when stuff happens on the timeline and things are shifting and changing, and we're breaking out of a time loop and so forth, that it creates a tangible physical sensation with an actual corresponding source location in the temporal timeline, which scientists have been able to pinpoint. So if déjà vus are a regular occurrence for you, the same as everything else, I recommend keeping a log book to document your experience. And I did suggest that that was a good idea. I did agree with that. Nothing works better than a log book book to get to the bottom of what something means to you personally. So here's synchronicities. Let's see what we go into here. You know what synchronicities are. I'm pretty sure all of you do. So much has been written about the nature of synchronicity that I don't pretend to be an innovator in the subject, but what I can do is offer up several theories as to why and possibly even how synchronicity manifests. And I could narrow my focus to that, because if you are someone who experiences ear ringings, deja vu, or frequent number sightings, or if you consider yourself to be an abductee, and a lifelong history of the, quote, weird stuff, then it's safe to assume that synchronicity is another phenomenon occurring in your life. Now, here's synchronicity defined by our honored and other weird stuff person, Carl Jung. He had a lot of weird stuff going on in his life. Some of his theories were kind of weird, but some of them were also very good and insightful. And here's his definition of synchronicity: the experience of two or more events which are causally unrelated occurring together in a supposedly meaningful manner. Okay? We all experience coincidences in our lives, and many of them probably occur by statistical chance. But every so often there are those that are just so pointed and so tailored to a particular detail and to something about you specifically that you can't dismiss it. And when that happens, statistical probability does not matter. So throw it out the window. The only thing that matters at that point is whether it has any meaning for you, that synchronistic moment. For example, reading a word right as it's said out loud next to you. Okay, that's one example. I know that in the chat room I often notice how people write their chat response simultaneously, I would say nearly identical. That's a synchronistic moment, you could say, okay? So here's about this word. So if you are reading a word exactly as it is being said out loud next to you, like someone's saying a word and you happen to be reading it, the more unusual the word, the more it means something to you. Objects coming your way or crossing your path or your field of view that coincide with an idea or theme you have been thinking about, or matching up to something that has personal meaning for you, and so on. For example, syncs, she calls syncs or synchronicities, are often time multi-layered, meaning they happen several at a time, all connecting together in a cluster that can sometimes even connect to other strange happenings around you. I have a term for it, which I call lining up. When you experience several synchronicity clusters together within a day or a few days' time, then it really can feel like reality is aligning in some way. So an important question is, what is the approximate amount of time that should transpire between both events for them to be considered synchronistic connections? And Jung's definition makes sure to include the phrase occurring together. But how soon is together? 10 minutes, 5 hours, a day, a week? I can only speak for myself, but for me, I've noticed that it's usually within an hour to several hours at the most, and at the most a day. And the ones that are a day apart are usually so fantastical as to not be dismissed as random coincidence. And I kind of like, my perspective is that there are no coincidences. That's what I believe. So it almost seems that it has to be that way in order to make sure it's getting our attention, and to make sure that not so much time has transpired that we've forgotten about the previous object, person, event that it's referencing, or that we can't just dismiss it like perhaps is our habit to do. Although that implies that there is some sort of intelligence driving it all, that even is trying to get our attention or convince us of its validity. And, well, I kind of go there too. Some sort of intelligence is driving it all. I don't necessarily believe that. I think that the process is driven by our own consciousness processes. And so therefore it means synchronicities would naturally cluster together due to the nature of how our consciousness interacts with reality. But I have to say that I think that we are subject to outside influence into our conscious mind, our realm or our sphere, I'm going to say. And, I'm just saying, I'm just throwing that in here because I think that that may be true on a lot of levels. Following is a nice sampling of the various types of synchronicities that can occur, all taken from her logbook to use as an illustration. And after that, I get into some of the possible theories as to how and why these happen. I also have some interesting MyLab abduction-related synchronicities that I talk about in her book. So she has a book, Chasing Phantoms, okay? And another common happening are message board synchronicities. This is when message boards participants are thinking about a particular subject, only to log on to their favorite forum and see that somebody has already started a thread about that very subject or written a post making mention of it. And this should kind of indicate to you that your message that you were getting, because another person was also getting that message, then that message may hold some very important, guidance for you. So this has happened to me on numerous occasions and is pretty freaky. Even weirder is when several people are all thinking about a particular topic, and then that gets addressed by somebody in the group. So why do synchronicities happen, and what is behind them? She says nobody knows for certain, herself included. However, there are various theories. So, glimpsing the interconnectedness of reality. I once saw this in a book, The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot, and thought it was a great theory on synchronicity, and it actually ties into the bullet points below concerning one's personal timeline being changed, which I'll get to in a moment. Now, Talbot ties the theory of a holographic universe into everything from how the brain works and psychology to the workings of the physical body, timelines, synchronicity, and many more things. Several excerpts pertaining to synchronicity in the book. Here's one. Jung encountered many such meaningful coincidences during his psychotherapeutic work, and he noticed that they almost always accompanied periods of emotional intensity and transformation, fundamental changes in belief, sudden and new insights, death, birth, and even changes in a profession. He also noticed that they tended to peak when the new realization or the insight was just about to surface in the patient's consciousness. And a physicist, F. David Peat, believes that synchronicities are therefore flaws in the fabric of reality, momentary fissures that allow us a brief glimpse of the immense and unitary order underlying all of nature. Thus, the relative scarcity of synchronicities experiences in our lives shows not only the extent of which we have fragmented ourselves from the general field of consciousness, but also the degree to which we have sealed ourselves off from the infinite and dazzling potential of the deeper orders of mind and reality. Now that's if you have relative scarcity of synchronicities. The perspective here is that you have fragmented yourself from the general field of consciousness. So basically, when you're stagnating in life, you've closed off in your cocoon and you've disconnected and you're fragmented, living the same old life, day in and day out, then you're not opening yourself up to being connected to the unified whole. But when you're changing and you're evolving, when you're learning new things, let's say you're coming out of your cocoon, that you're expanding and you're experiencing a life that's more connected to the whole, then you're opening yourself up to glimpsing the universe. And thus, synchronicities will be on the increase. I can definitely confirm that this seems to be the case in my own experiences. Times of great inner and outer change, especially when it's positive, means lots more synchronicities. Times of stagnation, nothing seems to happen. I noticed this on my own, but with my own personal angle interpretation of it all, as we'll see in the next bullet point. And it's called timeline alteration. Life-changing and or third density reality being shifted around. The reasons for the change could either be because you yourself are creating your own personal change and growth, which puts you on a new timeline, or it could be artificially helping along by hyper-dimensional behind-the-scenes beings, okay? Abductees and those who have experiences with non-human entities and the paranormal will be the ones most likely to relate to the second point, which is artificially helped along by hyperdimensional beings. For those who haven't and can't, don't worry about it. Just stick to the first point. But I noticed that I've gotten lots of synchronicities during time periods when my personal reality and my timeline seems to be shifting into something new. The same thing as the bullet point above, just a different way of noticing it. Other things such as number sightings and déjà vus will also be on the increase during those times of change, whether natural and self-induced or artificially imposed. And I want to just backtrack here about what she said above about being stagnant or staying in your cocoon. Well, I call it a comfort zone. Oftentimes we want to stay in our comfort zone because we believe it's comfortable, but in fact, it's really not for the best, for our, let's say, for the good of the whole, and that includes ourselves. And also, we often shut down because we're in a cocoon. We are not open. We are not willing. Let's say we're not willing to be open to guidance or synchronicities that might show us something is afoot or we need to pay attention. So we're very closed down, and so we are not open to spiritual guidance or messages that might very well be helping us or meant to help us in our life and movement, because we're kind of stuck. We're like mired in some cement block, and that could come from fear. We're fearful, anxious, and we don't want to step out into the unknown. But yet we might be ignoring guidance and information, those synchronistic signs that would help us to move forward, or at least communicate. They're communicating with us that there is something greater than what you're experiencing in your little dark cocoon, certainly your comfort zone. So you're not going to grow, expand, develop on many different levels if you stay in the comfort zone. And I have to say that there are times when it is so important that you get out on that web of life because you are needed somewhere. It's so significant when you meet up with someone or have some experience down the pathway on the road of life and you are resisting that by staying in your comfort zone. Well, there are times when you get hit by what I call a 2x4. Okay? It's sort of like, wake up. We need you to move. I mean, that would be, your guidance or spirit speaking to you. So yeah, staying in your comfort zone is sort of like a deadening or a dead end experience. You may think it's comfortable because that's your monkey mind telling you that. That's what I call the monkey mind. The monkey mind says, there's the big monster out there. Don't go out there. Let's just stay here. But where's your life? Where are you going? Where are you heading? Where's your growth? Where's your adventure? What's happening as far as you're fulfilling your original agreement about being here? You can't do that very much if you're on the couch in the comfort zone, in your cocoon. So I'm just saying. All right. Now let's continue here. This is about time moving backward. Yes, this is quite the mind blower. But I realized something. These synchronicities seem to be moving backwards in time. The future event is working backwards to cause the synchronicity that happened moments before in the past. Okay, you wrap your mind around that? I'm going to read it again. So this is quite the mind bender, she says, but she realized that these synchronicities seemed to be moving backwards in time. The future event is working backwards to cause the synchronicity that happened moments before in the past. My thoughts and actions were influenced at that present moment to where I was put into position, like a chess piece, you could say, in order to create a synchronicity that lined up to something moments in the future. And the future is creating the now. But when I say that my thoughts and actions were influenced by what exactly? I honestly don't know. I just know that there have been enough instances where I've been having stuff go through my mind, which at the time seemed like my own thoughts, only to have my thoughts line up to something that suddenly appeared in front of me. Or I'm going to add, thinking that these are our own thoughts, but yet somebody just emailed you the very same thing, or put in the chat the very same thing, or you get a phone call about a person that you've been thinking about, thinking that, well, I'm just thinking about them, and guess what? They call you and say, hey, I was just thinking about you. So, my first reaction to this has always been, oh, so I guess it wasn't really my own thought. To me, it just further proves the importance of getting a handle on our thoughts and being mindful and being focused instead of letting our thoughts run wild, as I often do. If you're mindful at all times of where your mind is, and then hopefully it reduces the probability for that sort of thing to happen. So I still don't have any answers as to what's going on and how that influencing is taking place. But it all seems to be spilling backwards with the past getting itself positioned. In other words, the past is being positioned. So I want to talk about collective consciousness here because I think that we are all consciously connected, and that collective consciousness, that frequency. We were talking about frequency earlier on the chat, and we always talk about frequency because we're learning a lot about this very important understanding that we are energetic beings, that everything has a frequency. Everything, all of creation vibrates with a certain frequency. And our thoughts, of course, have an energy frequency. Some of them are quite powerful, and others may actually experience them on a stronger level, and others that are not so powerful, maybe they might bypass us, or we might get a vague connection, but not a real powerful one. So I think a lot of this is that connectedness, that collective consciousness, that we are all vibrating in different frequencies and connectedness. And some of these, let's say some of the specific things that we all link in with together collectively as a synchronistic experience, let's say it's possible that these are being signified by some higher frequency or some higher entity or higher being. Now, I'm just throwing that out to you as a possible, okay? I mean, I'm always looking at all possibilities because I think that there are all types of possibilities. And I don't like to say, well, that's impossible. And I'll tell you why. Because in my life, in my experience of 70-some years, I have had such extraordinarily, and some people would say, impossible experiences, things happening, phenomenon that are, some people could say, well, that's impossible, or that's crazy, and that just could never happen. But I have had these things happen, and they are very extreme, unusual phenomenon. Therefore, I never say to someone who talks to me about an unusual phenomena or experience that they have had, I never ever would say to them, that's impossible. I just can't do that. It's just because I've had similar and more, even more, possibly more outrageously unexplained. The unexplained, Okay, a lot of this stuff is unexplained or impossibly explained. Let me phrase this. Some of what we're talking about is impossible to explain if you have a scientific mind or if you are trying to intellectualize everything. You're not going to get very far. This is in a realm, as my title of my talk show here is Beyond Reality. And that's why I like to talk about these things, because there is a lot out there that is beyond our reality, and we've been trained and programmed to what reality is. That's why I think it's so easy for people to say, jump in and say that's impossible, or that's not possible, or that's crazy, or that's ridiculous. And I think that that's kind of sad. I think that's unfortunate. And I'm sure there's many of you out there who may have had unusual experiences in your life and phenomena, so-called unexplained things. And sometimes it kind of puts you in a situation where you're kind of like the odd one out. And that's our society sets that up. You're the odd one out. You're the weird one. You're the freak. You're the, whatever. Which are not, it's not really a good feeling, but these are your real experiences. These are your truths, and they very well may be some form of connectedness and guidance on a higher level, and yet no one really supports that. Now, it depends on how you've grown up or who you've grown up with, I grew up in a family. My grandmother talked about the little people. She used to call in the spirits. She'd levitate tables. My aunties, my mother, my sister, myself all had those gifts. It threads through the female line back to the old country and into this Turtle Island, into my Nanticoke Lenape, Delaware heritage. And in those cultures, in the old way, I'm going to call it the old way, it was very common, and I'm going to use the word normal, okay? Very accepted, normal, common. You were not a strange, weird, crazy person. You had what they called the gift. Now that gift, sometimes they called it the sight, okay? Or you were a visionary. And many people, and I was one of those, was born with what is called a caul, C-A-U-L. It's a veil of a very thin veil of skin that is over the face of the infant that is immediately removed and thrown in the trash basket. But in the old days, that veil was taken and put in a very special spot. It was very sacred. And it was very significant. And the old people said, she has the sight. So that means she will be clairvoyant. She will be a visionary. She will have often clear audio gifts. synchronistic experiences happening, communication with the elementals, the beings, the woods people, the little people, the fairy nations, and so on, okay? All right, so moving up toward a higher realm. So thoughts are almost instantaneously manifesting, and reality is more variable. This is just a possibility and theory here. No sooner did you think something and boom, it appears to you in some way. I've gone through periods of my life where synchronicities are almost out of control for me. In fact, during one particular 2-week time period where I was diligently working on writing this website every day, I had more synchronicities than I've had in years. I'd think something and then there something was in front of me, reflecting that thought, like an object in a store window or whatever. I'd think another thought, then somebody would pass by me and say that phrase out loud. The synchronicities were happening one after the other, piling on top of each other. I got to the point where I wanted to cover my head and curl up in a ball and go, ah, and block out reality. I wanted to make it stop. It was just too much. But see, this also can tie into the first bullet point, which is that when we're coming out of a closed-off cocoon or our comfort zone, expanding and changing and learning new things, being connected up to the whole, that we are tapping into the unified whole, allowing for synchronicities to manifest. And I have to also add here that her reaction to, I just wanted to cover my head and curl up in a ball and scream, in the way of Don Juan, the teachings of the becoming a shaman or spiritual warrior, all right, these types of experiences are very common, and you learn more and you can delve into them deeper and receive more guidance and information when such an episode occurs. You don't go, oh my God, let me just get out of here and go away, go away, go away. No, this is a very significant message why this is happening. After all, you're in sync. Synchronicities. You are in sync with the messengers. Okay, something, someone, a guide, a teacher, whatever it is, okay, is connecting with you and showing you, like through a doorway to, moving up on a higher level. So, synchronicities as a message from something higher. Not all synchronicities are caused by timeline changes and realm shifts, in my opinion. I think quite often they're used as a tool by our higher selves, our guides, our protectors, to get important messages to us. Yes, see, that's just what I was referring to. So, maybe something we need to hear at a particular junction in our lives, and so on. This can be conveyed through meaningful coincidences to get a point across to us. Now, one example of a positive message, synchronicity, was back in 2003 when I had been talking to my friend about a well-known internet personality, conspiracy writer, channeler, who was one of those all gloom and doom all the time people. This person is forever wallowing in a woe-is-me victim mindset, grumping about everything that was wrong and ugly in the world. They even run one of those infamous alternative news headline sites under the guise of informing us. I told my friend that I just can't be that way. No matter what's going on around me in life, I can still usually see what's good and right about things. I thought about my picture taking as I said this, which is all about admiring everything that's beautiful in the world, including taking pictures of things that most people wouldn't find worthy of photographing. So let's just put it that way. But to me, it's interesting. And that's why way back when I liked the movie American Beauty, and there was a movie called Pecker. I don't know that movie. So me and my camera taking pictures of everything from colorful flowers and the ocean to used needles lying next to a piece of tinfoil covered in brown residue on a sidewalk in the ghetto of Portland could totally relate to those movies. So as we were talking, I saw the unopened fortune cookie lying on the counter from our Chinese takeout the night before. I had gotten to eat my cookie with my meal, so I ripped into it now as we talked. And the fortune cookie said, "You find the beauty in ordinary things. Do not lose this ability." Now, had I opened the cookie the night before with my dinner, then this synchronicity would not have happened. So an important, positive, helpful message being conveyed through a very obvious case of synchronicity. Free will isn't being violated and everybody wins. And I'm going to take a short break. I see that it's the top of the hour. I'm going to take a 5-minute break, I think, and I will see you on the other side, and we'll continue with this mystery of synchronicities and who's talking to us. I'll see you on the other side.
Alrighty, and we are live again.
Thank you, Colleen. Okay, so here's another cookie. Hold on, I think I lost my place. Oh yeah, here's another amazing fortune cookie synchronicity, which happened on January 18th, 2008. For about 2 weeks, I had been worrying to myself that maybe by sticking with my temp agency, who I'd been with at that point for 4 years now, I was somehow limiting myself and putting all my eggs in one basket. I wasn't sure what I should be doing, if I was doing the right thing or not by staying with them and hoping they'd come up with another assignment for me. Then I received a fortune cookie on 1/18 from our favorite Chinese buffet that said, "No harm in putting all your eggs in one basket. Just watch it closely." Really, what are the odds? Synchronistic message from something higher, obviously answering me back. It made me smile, though, and shortly thereafter I did receive another kind of primo assignment from my agency, and thus continued to stick around with them, but still I kept a close eye on that basket. There are even more of these amazing synchronous fortune cookie messages, but these ones are good examples to illustrate. I don't consider these to be coincidental at all, and for me they have been a direct oracle tool for receiving bits of important advice and insight. Yeah, I can just see the little spirits, or maybe it's the little people who are passing on these little fortune cookies saying, okay, let's put this one in this bag and that one in that bag because this person needs that message and that person needs this message. You know, I'm just fooling there, but we never know, right? Okay. Artificial synchronicity for negative manipulative purposes, usually tying into abduction hyperdimensional happenings. And when I say abduction, I'm referring to both so-called alien and military abductions, okay? I get into this in my book, and it's something that abductees need to be mindful of. But sometimes synchronicities will be artificially generated to try to manipulate or reinforce to the target a particular decision or life path choice, which they're in the process of making. Now, not all synchronicities mean that you're on the right path or that a particular decision is the right one to be making. So always question everything. And I'm right there with her on that. I think it's very important, as I've often talked about, our discernment tool. So even if you say, well, synchronicity, situations are a clue, the clue means to be discerned, needs to be discerned, and that's our job energetically, as I've described. How do you discern the truth, fact from false? And that is through energy. How does it feel when you question the universe about this circumstance or pose your question pay attention to the energy, because the positive is always a higher sensation or a higher frequency, or you could even say a lighter or light, as a negative is usually a heavier or darker sensation, feeling, all right? That's a good way to begin to use your discernment tool. Yes, and it's important to question everything. So, related to this, sometimes people will cross an abductee's path, synchronistically saying things that match up to unusual subject matter that the abductee has just been thinking about or even talking about. This is something to be suspicious of, not just naively fall for. In the book The Alien Love Bile by Eve Lorgan, she details alien involvement into human love relationships, which always entail synchronicity to some extent. Two targets will be brought together and bitten with the love bite, falling into a passionate and very manipulated affair. Then they would be broken apart, all so that the aliens can feed on the resulting intense emotions of it all. Now, it's something to think about here, because the ETs, or the dark ones, whatever you want to call them, the sorcerers, I call them, in this case, do feed on negative energy. That's their buffet, and we can be a big buffet if we are kind of like are on the level of doubt, fear, and I'll throw in greed there, jealousies, judgments. These are all, and hate, of course, bigotries. These are all low vibrations, low frequencies, and these particular beings, aliens, she's calling them, and that's very true. I call them the sorcerers because they told me actually that they were looking for windows of opportunity, and then they would enter into a person and manipulate them. And the windows of opportunity were just what I had said, low frequencies, hatred, jealousies, greed, violence, all that type of the energies that are low are food for something, So, and what initially helps reinforce to these targets that they should be together are unbelievable synchronicities, psychic happenings, and so on. So that's another thing to keep in mind if you are an abductee and begin experiencing some far-out synchronicities and strange happenings with a romantic interest, with another person, of course. It very well may be artificial and also manipulated. The idea of messages being conveyed to us through meaningful symbolism and synchronicity actually overlaps with my piece about dreamtime versus our waking lives, and the idea of interpreting the symbols around you in life the same as you would in a dream, complete with dream dictionary and all. Synchronicities in themselves may have individual symbolic meaning, as well as being indicative of something bigger going on in general. The universe is always speaking to us. It's just a matter of whether we're paying attention or not. And also, I'm going to throw in my very important message if we are also using our discernment tool to figure out what is the universe speaking about? What is that guidance, or, what are we receiving? So dream time and waking life, two sides of the same coin. I used to be somebody who felt that dream time was distinctly different from our waking time. In other words, I thought one was real and the other was clearly not. I wasn't into analyzing my dreams because I felt they were just nonsense that our brains invented to keep it entertained while the body rested. Now I have a completely different perspective on the matter, but this did not happen overnight. And over the past few years, as I've become more conscious and have incorporated a more spiritual view into my reality, my dreams have evolved to reflect that change. And because of that, I've come to realize that there is definitely more to dreaming than just nonsense brain firing. In fact, there are several possibilities that can happen when you lay down for that nap. Now here's what she calls brain gunk. Bits and pieces of things we saw, heard, or did throughout the previous couple of days can manifest in our dreams in strange and bizarre fractured sequences. It's the mind's way of processing all the miscellaneous tidbits that our brains captured and didn't do anything with. Now, on a related note, our brains do this while awake as well, which I'll get to in a moment. Now, this would be considered the nonsense aspect of dreaming. And in those dreams where you believe you're at work and are racing against time, some deadline or impossible workload, and the looping dreams where you or a dream fragment keep repeating itself over and over until you finally wake up like, brain gunk. Now, meaningful messages. Then there are the meaningful symbolic dreams, the ones with some semblance of a plot, chock full of objects and vivid situations that can all be found in a handy-dandy dream dictionary. And those are the fun dreams, the ones where your subconscious and our higher self is speaking to you through the universal language of symbols. The trick is to remember these, which is why dream logs can be handy. And I do suggest also that you keep a dream journal. As I talked about last week, if you have the time and you are so inclined, it is important, just keep your dream journal on the side of your bed. Something is trying to talk and convey its message to you, so you may as well listen. Portals to other realms. Moving up from dreams with plots and vivid situations are dreams that go into the category of virtual reality. Dreams where you were visiting places you've never been, but yet it felt so real to you in the dream that it was like you were really there. And who knows, maybe you were. Dreams where you meet up with people you know and maybe haven't seen in a long time, or who may even be dead, but are paying you a visit. This is when dreams begin to act as actual portals. It's the sort of thing I didn't used to know about or believe in when I was younger, but I have since had experiences which have shown me otherwise. Another aspect of dreaming can involve visiting parallel realities that we have or that we are existing in, because for every choice we or our parents made for us, there's the choice we or they did not make, which exists somewhere out there. So I think we can connect to those parallel realities when we sleep. We get to see what we would be doing if we were over there instead of over here. Some do this via astral travel as well, leaving their bodies and flying around. When we sleep, there's that great potential to flit about, meeting up with people, having powwows, so to say, and going to other realms, learning things, even if we don't consciously remember them when we awake. Many people also describe going to classrooms where they are taught things while they sleep. And yes, speaking of classrooms, many star children, I would say a great majority of star children, are taken in dream time to these classrooms. And that is where we are downloaded with information, with guidance, with insights, wisdom, and teachings. And often we are given particular messages to share or to carry through, to help other people. So yes, those classrooms do exist. Now, screen memories, dreams which are very real feeling, vivid and strange, involving ETs, whatever they actually are, UFOs and military personnel abductions can also possibly be screening memories of an abduction for those of you who are abductees. The number one place to get clues about your abductions, if you can't consciously recall things, would be in your dreams. They can often be real and semi-altered memories of events that took place, or at least a screen that has been put in place by you or them. So apparently a lot can happen when you sleep, much more than I ever realized when I was younger. And I want to just go back here and talk about the dreams where she's saying they're vivid, strange, involving aliens, whatever they actually are, or UFOs, and here, military personnel. Okay, it's interesting because dreams that do have within them military personnel are usually a real abduction experience. It's not just a dream. Okay, and it is a screen memory. When you wake up, this screen memory comes in that maybe you were in a room and there were military people there. That is often indicates an abduction. Not necessarily by the military, by the way, because oftentimes an abductee may have an experience, an abduction experience, and these ETs show themselves as military personnel, and this has been something that very, very fascinating to me. But I just wanted to mention that. If sometimes people tell me, well, I don't think I've been abducted, and then they'll share with me some dreams or some waking experiences that they've had, and I say to them, I really do feel that you have been abducted, and I'll tell you how I know that, So oftentimes people do have very amazing phenomenon, a waking phenomenon, and unusual dreams, but they have no clue that they've been abducted, right? So apparently a lot can happen when you're sleeping. Pay close attention to your dreams and your sleep experiences to get clues. And again, a dream log is a useful tool, and I finally got around to getting one going this year, and that was in 2008, after previously claiming to never have enough time in the mornings. For the first 3 months, I've been in self-discipline mode, and a big part of that is getting up at 2 to 3 hours before I'm due to be at work to write my dreams. A miracle for me, somebody who loves their sleep. So logging dreams, when I can remember them, is now a part of my daily checklist of discipline to engage in. The more you log in with your dreams, the more you seem to have, I've noticed. And once reality realizes you're paying attention, and that's true. I talked last week about why it is important to have a dream journal, because when you have dreams and you don't have them a place to be, like writing them down, you're trying to hold on to these dreams in some part of your mind, and you don't remember the whole dream, or particles of the dream, parts of the dream disappear on you. And also you're cluttering up your conscious mind by holding on to these dreams. If you give them a place to be, it makes room for more. And yes, as she says here, you're actually paying attention, so guidance or source, let's say guidance or guides, will give you more information, because they see that you are finally waking up and paying attention, and you are open, so they will help you more. What I've also found amazing is the way in which many times a group of objects or symbolisms or actions, happenings will appear in a dream, and on the surface they don't seem connected. Yet when I look up their meaning in a dream dictionary, it turns out that they are all connected and they do relate. How it's possible for the subconscious to know these symbolisms, meanings, when the conscious is beyond me, but it's very amazing. Well, I think it's a lot deeper than just the subconscious. I think that, the connectedness that we have and the energetic, conscious, collective consciousness, it's not just here with humans that we are connected to. It's to the whole of the cosmic realm. So once you acknowledge that your dreams are full of meaningful symbolism and otherworldly occurrences, what about your waking life? Is it really all that separate from the dream time? Should you tackle your waking life the way you would when you analyze your dreams, complete with a dream dictionary and all, or a daytime dictionary? If you'd asked me that question even 5 years ago, I would have laughed and thought that was ridiculous, but not anymore. I pay attention and have also recorded the things that happen in my waking life as evidenced by this site that you are reading. You'll see excerpts from my logs regarding number sightings, ear ringings, deja vu, and synchronicities. All of it is tackled the way one would when analyzing their dreams. Anything unusual that manifests in my reality, any object, an animal, numbers, names, and so forth, that appear to me in a strange way, I look them up, I analyze them in exactly as I would any dream. Why? Because our waking life isn't really that much different from our sleeping state. Some would say there's no difference at all. I say there is a difference, but it's small. In your dreams, you don't really get injured or die, nor do you really do the things that you do. But yet there is that potential for connecting to parallel realities, meeting up with others, astral travel, or having premonitions about things that do end up happening when you are awake. So in that sense, reality and fiction become blurred during dream time. Now, same as our waking state. Things are more solid and real when you're awake versus in a dream. You can get hurt, you can bleed, you can even die, and are actually interacting with people in that real realm. But yet there are so many glitches in the matrix moments and surreal times when bizarre stuff is happening that it leads one to question exactly how real is this anyway. And I was going to say that as like we talk about waking is reality, but I don't know. That's a good question. And she's also questioning it as well. I think it's important to question that. Just saying. What we may think is real or reality may not be so. Our dream state and waking state are really just two sides of the same coin. And this becomes very evident when you try to be as conscious and aware as possible when you are awake. I've been trying to do this off and on for the past 3 months, and I'll tell you, it's been an eye-opener, to say the least. Time and again, I'll have the intent for things that I want to do during my day, as well as things I don't want to do, such as time wasting and bad habits. And time again, I realize that I completely bungled it all up. How? Well, by falling asleep even though I was awake. It's exactly the same way we lose ourselves when we fall asleep and enter into the dream state. When you slip off into dreamland, you lose control over yourself and your mind and forget most everything you are as a person when you're awake. Your whole daytime life just goes, poof, gone. Unless you've mastered lucid dreaming, then you'll just be like most people who get swept up in your dreamtime happenings with plots and strange adventures and random characters being taken along for the ride instead of being in charge and directing how things go. And that's what lucid dreaming is being in charge and being the director of your dream experience. And I suppose it's really a good point that in our waking life, this is a very good practice, is to be in charge and directing how you want your life to go. So that's exactly what can happen during the day if one is not completely conscious and aware of at all times. You're just going along on the ride. You're not in charge. You know, there's all kinds of silly plots happening and strange things happening. And so you're really not aware, awake, conscious. So with myself, there I'll be in front of the computer intending to write something maybe, or print something out, or look something up as research. And then I get a whim to click on a different website instead, which leads to another and another and another. And then I'll have the urge to open my music folder and start playing some tune. And next thing I know, 2 hours has gone by and I still haven't done any of my original plan. I just, she says, wasted time. I lost myself and fell asleep, even though I was wide awake. It's kind of alarming once you begin noticing it and are trying not to be that way. Although when it comes to this, Certainly, everybody is going to be varying degrees of worse or better than others. Now, I may beat myself up for being easily sidetracked by the computer, but then I have to keep in mind 2 of my male supervisors at my latest temp job who seem very much asleep at the wheel and oftentimes are kind of glazed over and la la la. And I know some people like that too. They come across as very pliable and easily spun off into any direction to the point where I have to be careful not to inadvertently change their minds or confuse them about anything, because their minds will just go wherever I nudge them. It's kind of scary. And I think a lot of people out there in the world are that way. It's not just my 2 supervisors. And it's why someone like Darren Brown, for instance, the illusionist mind control manipulator from Channel 4 in England, is so successful at his tricks. This morning, March 20th, 2008, I embarked on an exercise in mental awareness where I paid attention to every single movement I made. It's hard. That's all I can say, as the brain relies on autopilot to accomplish most tasks that are second nature. You have to consciously slow yourself down in order to keep up with monitoring your every movement, as well as tracking your every thought that pops into your mind. And what I noticed with the whole thought tracking thing in particular is that while much of my internal dialogue chatter could be traced to its triggering origins, some of it, however, could not, and in fact was merely random neuron firing, just nonsense flashes that popped into my head with no traceable origins for what triggered it, which is exactly what happens when we sleep. Many times, that's what's going on. So yes, it's even more proof for me that sleeping, dreaming, and our awake daily lives are just 2 sides of the same coin. Real-life, dreamlike symbolisms. For a period of time, I kept encountering stuff relating to RVs, recreational vehicles, as I went about life. First, I had a dream about being in an RV, going up a huge mountain on a gorgeous sunny day, with piercing blue sky, so high up that it seemed like we were flying. Next, about a week later, my boyfriend found himself doing some web design work for a couple who were putting together a website regarding their travels in an RV. Finally, I had a bad rollerblading accident on summer solstice, where I was actually flying along on my rollerblades and wiped out in front of an RV that was idling in a driveway. I either sprained or fractured my wrist during that wipeout, again on summer solstice no less, and it all occurred in front of yet another RV. By the second RV occurrence, I'd already stopped to take notice, but by the third, I actually looked it up in the dream dictionary to see what the flip was going on. Then there were the silver dimes. At the beginning of 2004, I'd been thinking about odd silver coin money prior to 1964, and I had the offhand joking realization that I don't think I've ever actually seen a silver dime. In fact, I wondered if there were even any in existence, and wouldn't it be cool to see one? Boy, I wanted to see a silver dime. And soon after that, I began receiving silver dimes, but only at certain key moments in my life. I don't just get them at random times for no good reason. I've only gotten them during times I made an extremely positive change in my life, or positive choices that led me in a good direction where I need to be going. Then coincidentally, within a day, I'd get a silver dime in my change, or I'd find one in my wallet. In fact, the weekend I had the bright idea to formulate this website, I received a silver dime. I have 4 now in my possession, and all of them came my way at key times. Dimes are denominations of 10. 2 dimes, 1010. The dates on all the dimes I have happen to be 1964. 1 plus 9 equals 10. 6 plus 4 equals 10. 1010. During the time that I received my first 2 silver dimes, I began getting 1010 synchronicities as well, which overlaps with meaningful number sightings too, including the date when I purchased the domain name for this website, which was October 10th, 2005, 1010. At any rate, I looked up all the symbolism in a dream dictionary: silver, dimes, coins, and the number 10, tackling the situation as if I were interpreting a dream. And at the tail end of 2003, going into the first week or two of 2004, paramedic fire truck sirens and car alarms were everywhere at every turn. Car alarms going off in the middle of the night, repeatedly, paramedic and fire truck sirens frequently, day and night. It got so obnoxious and noticeable that I looked it up and interpreted it as a dream symbol. Sirens are a normal part of life in an urban area, but this was something else. It was happening so often, to such an extent, that there was just no dismissing it. Only when I finally acknowledged it and looked into it did it cease. Another time I'd had a very crazy, vivid My Labs-related dream. After I awoke and got ready for work, I left my apartment to head to my car, and then found a baseball cap lying on my car. A blue New England Patriots cap, just lying there on the hood, waiting for me. The whole thing was just so bizarre, especially considering the dream I'd woken up from only a half an hour before. As I approached my car, seeing something lying there on the hood, it felt surreal, almost dreamlike. I ended up interpreting that incident using my intuition and the trusty dream dictionary. Hat, cap, the color blue, car hood, Patriots, football, game, anything I could think of relating to it, as well as interpreting the dream I'd had. All of it was lumped together in one big group, and I treated the hat incident as if it was just one continuous extension of the dream, because in reality it was. Interestingly enough, the symbolisms of hat and car hood are actually closely related. Both have to do with concealing and hiding something, which tied into another recurring dream symbolism I'd been having during that time period, involving yellow eyes. Yellow as in coward, eyes as in seeing, being afraid to see something. And here I had a hat lying on the car hood. That means stuff that was hidden, that was concealed. It was a little too coincidental. But there are no coincidences, really. Consequently, 2 months later, when the Super Bowl was going on, I predicted the Patriots would win, only because the hat had been lying on my car hood 2 months before. And they did. They did win, and too bad I didn't make any bets. Maybe people reading this may already be familiar with another website called Crystal Links, put out by Ellie Crystal. For a while back, when I used to read this site on a regular basis, the content of her daily blog would just so happen to coincide with stuff that I and many of her other readers had recently been thinking about, or dreaming about, or directly experiencing. The first time it was kind of cool, but the second, third, and fourth time this happened, it was just uncanny. I mean, what is going on here? That we're all experiencing, seeing, thinking, or dreaming the same things? The same symbolisms? The same general themes? In a nutshell, it's a grid-wide symbolism, you could call it. Something which is out there in the program, the collective unconscious, however you choose to define it, and which many are simultaneously picking up on at the same time, kind of like the theme of the week, as I call it. The reason I mention this is because there have been a few occasions where I experienced unusual symbolism in my waking life, which I took note of and looked up in a dream dictionary, only to find the same symbolism being mentioned on Crystal Link's daily blog. One time the symbolism involved feathers. During the same time period where feathers were a topic on Crystal Links, I also had a feather encounter. I was with my boyfriend at a laundromat, and we were planning to go sit down at the base of the stairs to read while we waited for our clothes. And at the very spot where we planned to sit, there were 2 different types of feathers waiting for us on the ground. Another time the symbolism involved ducks, of all things. Yes, ducks. I kept seeing ducks all over, and then one flew directly across the road in front of my car while I was driving down the street to my apartment. It seemed so pointed and unusual that I took note of it, and then I found Elle on Crystal Links talking about unusual duck encounters as well on her site that week. So the grid-wide theme of the week was ducks. Indigenous people are noted for being very in touch with their environment and nature, and that includes interpreting the things that happen around them. Everything is taken to mean something, which contrasts greatly with our modern Western world where nobody notices anything, it seems, unless it involves money or nifty gadgets and toys and clothes and cars and TV, movies, celebrities. People don't notice or seem to care. One time, during 2005, I was at a get-together with a group of about 20 people, one of whom included a woman of Cherokee descent. She was a psychic and very in tune with things, and when a wasp appeared in the room, hovering about in one particular corner, everybody else just perceived it as a pest to get rid of. For her, it was a pest as well as a symbolic omen. She stated that it was a bad sign, and for her it indicated that someone present in the room was closed off and negative. Interestingly enough, the wasp was focused over one particular man who always sat there, arms folded, closed off, and who elicited ear ringings from my boyfriend every time he spoke. He would later turn out to be greatly incompatible with the group and would have a temporary falling out with them. Now, I want to remind you, her boyfriend, I talked about this last week. He has a website and blog talk show, and he would experience this particular high-pitched ringing in one particular ear every time he noticed a particular person getting on the web chat. And it was that person kept spewing out negative stuff, okay? And every time that person would get on, his ear would ring. And so even before the guy actually showed himself on, his ears would ring, and he knew, yeah, he's going to come on, and sure enough, he would. Okay. So they say that reality is a shared dream of the masses. They also talk about reality being a grid, a program, a matrix, a zoo, an experiment. I think it's a little of all of those. It's definitely not what mainstream science and school conditions or teachings or education has us believe it is. Not that it's education. Okay. If a particular animal, object, number, or theme pops up in your life in an unusual way, then it might mean something, especially if it happens more than once. So she's suggesting why not pick up a copy of a good dream dictionary and see what you find when you start looking. And I did talk about this before. I received a message several years ago from guidance from Spirit that this timeline that we are in is about each one of us developing our gifts, developing the wisdom that is innately within us. And that means to put the books down, to put like this dictionary she's talking about. Put aside these books. You're relying on something that disallows you to develop your own wisdom and your own resource of connectedness to Source. And the way of First Nations people, if an animal crossed our path in a significant way, or a bird flew over us, or some sign came in a significant way, we didn't run to a book. We didn't go look to the dictionary like she's talking about, or a dream, if we had a dream, or a vision. Okay. First of all, there were no books, but we had developed through our sensitivities and our relationship to nature and our relationship to the spiritual realm, we developed these gifts that Creator gave to everyone. So the message that I received was, this timeline is about our enlightenment. This timeline is about our transitioning into higher frequencies of wisdom and relationship and connectedness, interconnectedness and inner standing. So if you constantly get, signals or messages, like she's talking about, even dreams or waking experiences, and you constantly keep going to the dictionary, go to the dream book, go to the animal book, okay, you're really not developing your own inner wisdom, your own gift of communication. So I just wanted to make sure that I did, again, reiterate that. Now you might try receiving your own guidance by speaking to the universe, because when we speak to the universe with clear intention, the universe responds in kind and is ever present, to do that. And so if you go, let's say you have had an experience with an animal, in our way, we would sit down, we would make an offering, what we call the sacred tobacco, and give a gift and say thank you, or Pilamaya, which is thank you in Lakota. Thank you for showing yourself to me. And sit there and open up your heart, open up your mind, open up your ears, and just be still and be quiet with your intention to receive guidance and information relating to why that animal has come to you, or why it has shown itself to you. Now, oftentimes, let's say you're driving along in your car, and your mind is going a mile a minute about this, about that. Maybe you're struggling with something and you're having a dialogue in your mind about that, or maybe you're talking with somebody in your mind who you just had a situation with, or you're just trying to clarify something in your life. And let's say that a hawk flies right in front of your car and continues to fly with you, in front of you, like almost over the hood of your car. And it just keeps flying right along with you. I mean, that's pretty awesome when you see that, I have seen that, actually. I have experienced that. And it so happens this one particular time, I was on a back road. I don't know where I was going, but I was having a bad day. And I was mulling over this stuff in my mind while I'm driving, as we often do. And I was kind of down, I was really having a bad day. I was feeling very frustrated and it wasn't good. It wasn't a good day. And then suddenly, as I'm driving down this road, this red-tailed hawk comes from out of nowhere and swoops right in front of the window, over the hood of the car, moves a little bit ahead, and is just flying right in front of me, keeping time with me. And it touched me. It uplifted me. For me, personally, it was that message of, we're here. You're not alone. We're with you. We're guiding you. We're watching you. It's going to be okay. It was like that. An instant sense of that moment of, wait, things they're not really that bad. I'm just like stuck in this mind-churning monkey mind place, So, but I'm just saying that try not to rely on the books, on the dream dictionary, because everyone's dream is unique. When you have a dream and you go to the dictionary, all right, that book, that dream dictionary is written by a person or so on who has specific guidelines for dreams. They're not always exact for what you might be dreaming. You might take some of the pieces, and then again you could use your discernment, tool. Is this singing to my heart spirit? In other words, if I go to the Dream Book Dictionary, dreaming about water, that dream book will have all kinds of information about what your water dream signifies. It may not be what your water dream signifies, though. Okay? Because you are unique. You may have different information concerning the water dream that isn't in that book. And therefore, if you take what the book says, then you're missing the message. So you can use your discernment tool. If you read something in the book about the water dream, just close your eyes for a minute and hold that thought about what the water dream book is saying and ask Source, ask the universe, does this ring true with my heart spirit? And pay attention to the frequency. If the answer is yes, you will feel light. You will feel a light energy, a higher frequency. If the answer is no, it will be a different sensation. You could try that, but I advocate if you really want to flow in this time shift, this timeline of our transitioning into higher consciousness, into enlightenment, and to uncover the doorway to the wisdom within you, then we have to start taking these types of steps on how to develop that innate wisdom within you, the gifts and tools that you were born with, that basically have been dumbed out of us, and also, we were told that these things are ridiculous or impossible or doesn't mean a thing if an eagle flies in front of you and drops a feather on your lap. That's just coincidence. Doesn't mean a thing. So, and it definitely does, of course. All right. So parallel timelines and the nature of time. I have a little bit of time. I'm going to get into this, and there is so much more here. But I think next Friday I will be able to complete this and get back to Don Juan and the spiritual warrior teachings and the shamanic way. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to finish this next week, but I'm finding it's very fascinating. And I hope you are too. Okay. I was rewatching a downloaded episode of Stargate 5G1 from season 3 called Point of View. Point of View. Original air date July 30th, 1999, which deals with parallel timelines and realities and alternate universes. It's a repeating theme on the show, actually, with several other episodes revolving around that concept. The world of 5G1 is clearly not the only way in which reality could have worked out for the characters or for the people of Earth, and various episodes show the other possibilities that are out there, which is very cool. But that particular episode basically says what I say here, almost word for word even. But the thing is, I don't own a TV, and I never watched this series until a year ago during the winter of 2006 and 2007. And this was when my boyfriend downloaded them from the net, and we began watching them on our computer. So I didn't copy this from an S or 5G1 episode. The first time I ever pondered parallel timelines was when I was 17 in California. This was back in 92, which I get into later on in this write-up. Then again when I was 23 and 34. Interestingly enough, somewhere between 98 and 99, roughly around the time when the 5G1 episode originally aired. But I purposefully didn't own a TV back then either, and so definitely had never watched it. In fact, I didn't even hear of this series until 2001. I know what triggered me at 17 to ponder all of this, though, but I can't recall any more why I was thinking about it when I was 23. I just remember lying on the bed in a blank state, staring at the wall, pondering what I talk about here. It came from somewhere, though, but where, I don't know. February 2009, additional add-on. All right, the whole opening monologue of the 1991 Richard Linklater movie Slacker also talks about everything that I note here. I was only just watching this movie for the first time this month, February 2009. But I felt it was important to note this, as I don't want people thinking I'm just copying some sci-fi TV show. Okay, and yet another note. The entire premise of the TV series Fringe, which debuted in 2008, is turning out to be, yes, parallel universe, as they call it. I wrote about the parallels between Fringe and the things I've been writing about on this site in my thoughts section under the heading The Surge of Conspiratorial Mind Control Government Experimentation Abductions Material on the Media. So just click on that link to get it. But needless to say, I wrote this write-up on the website 2 years before the show aired. For every choice you make in life, there exists the choice that you didn't make, or the road not taken. But you actually did take it on what's known as another timeline. Do I quit my job, or do I stay? Do I move here, or do I move there? Or not move at all? Do I hook up with so-and-so, or stay single, or choose him, her, over them instead? Each and every choice creates a fork in the road, down to whether you choose to wear one shirt to work or another. Some timelines are so closely identical with such significant divergences that they pretty much blend together, and others are based on choices that are so vastly polarizing and far-reaching that it's a complete branching and formulates a new version of you, that you could almost say. On some level, you wind up living out all the possible choices available to you in any given situation. But since you can't be in two places at the same time, or 10 million places or more, you experience each individual timeline as if it's the only one. To experience them all simultaneously is too much for the human mind to handle. Okay, and with that, I'm going to sign off till next Friday. And I hope you enjoyed this. I'm really liking this, and we'll go a little further with these timelines. I'm curious about this because I've had experience in parallel realm and so on. So we'll see what she comes up with here. And thank you for being here today, and thank you, Colleen. And I'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you, Barb.